You're welcome to Let's Talk.
We sit down and talk. We need to sit down and talk. How Nigeria should go, how we're going to do our job.
We want to stand up and say no to corruption. We're going to do our job because you're telling the system you are not just doing it for yourself or for the nation alone, you also do it for the future.
Boko Haram is an attack, it's a spiritual attack. It's a satanic attack on Nigeria. We must, if we come to recognize it, we will understand then how to look for the solution.
The Sovereign National Conference, how do we want to achieve that in our present system? We need to sit down and iron out how Nigeria should be governed.
Hello there, welcome, and great you could join us. And this is Let's Talk. It grants us the rare opportunity of looking at issues that are happening on the Nigerian stage. And today we'll be focusing on a very crucial issue, which is the Plateau conflicts and the Nigerian security question. And with me to do that is a gentleman who's been here before. He's a friend of the house. His name is Chinedu Chidi, a coordinator, Book Rain Initiative, social expert, and public policy analyst. Chinedu, welcome.
Always an incredible pleasure to be here.
That's wonderful.
Always.
It's great to have you again on the show. And Chinedu, let's get talking right now. The issue on ground now is the Plateau State conflict. It's a serious cause for concern. It's been going on, lingering on. It's been a thorn in the nation's flesh for so long, and a lot of lives have been lost. The region that was most peaceful, if you can say that, and known as a tourism hub in the country, right now has become a theater for violence and ethnic clashes. What do you think birthed this very sad situation?
But first and foremost, my heart goes out to the families of all of the victims and casualties of this needless violence and bloodshed and bloodletting in Plateau State. But I want to say that Plateau State is only a highlight of the widespread security challenge that we have in the country, and particularly in the northern part of the country, especially as it has to do with the Boko Haram crisis and ethno-religious conflicts widespread in different parts of the north. Now, I think that this particular crisis is steeped in history, and it stems from a long-term inter-ethnic animosity, inter-ethnic antipathy, if you like. And I think that is deeply rooted in a conception of mutual hate, which I think has been deepened in our cultural and political development over time. I think it is quite unfortunate that we've allowed this inter-ethnic rivalry, inter-ethnic conflict, mutual hate to degenerate into a point of full-blown crisis and violence. It is quite sickening because it portends great danger to the security and stability of the state and the country, and also the region, the northern region. So I think it is quite worrisome. I think it is a big security situation that we have to focus on and find lasting solutions to.
Now, do you think there is a connection between the Plateau State killings and conflicts with what is happening in the other parts, the northern parts of the country right now? Do you think they have a correlation? Because as government has not been able to clamp down, or rather contain, that violence right now, do you think it's an issue of it spreading?
Well, I think that the history of this country has been marked by an uprising, if you like, an upsurge, I think there's a better word, an upsurge of inter-ethnic and religious conflicts, which I think has been quite typical of our socio-political development in the country. I think that what is happening in Plateau State is an example, a highlight of what has been happening in different parts of the country, and with special focus, I think, on the northern region of this country. I think that it reflects the deep-seated hatred shared by different ethnic and religious groups within the country. So I think it is quite worrisome. I think it is steeped in history. I think it is deeply rooted in our political origins and our political and historical evolution as a people. So I think that at this point that it is today, it is not a surprise that we are where we are. It is not a surprise that we are facing this particular crisis in Plateau State. It is not a surprise that we've not been able to effectively manage it, because I actually do think that true peace cannot be enforced. I actually do think that a security situation that arises from inter-ethnic, negative inter-ethnic orientation and religious orientation cannot be easily forced to a state of stability. I do sincerely believe that there has to be a significant paradigm shift. There has to be a significant conceptual shift, if you like. There has to be a significant reorientation, a significant change in perspective as regards the concept of mutual coexistence, the concept of inter-religious and inter-ethnic peaceful coexistence, so to speak, for us to have lasting peace. I believe that force cannot solve this particular crisis. I believe that violent force on the part of the government cannot stem this inter-ethnic conflict that we're having.
Okay, some believe that this sad development that assumed a dangerous dimension is more or less can be classified as genocide. What do you say about that?
Well, genocide, I think that's a big word.
Okay.
And I think that it depends on the perspective from which the person who is classifying is speaking. Now, genocide against whom and genocide perpetrated by whom? I think that these are very important questions that we cannot just treat in a watery fashion or analyze out of a serious technical context or as determined by the United Nations. I think is a very technical word, it's a very serious word, and it has to be seriously, technically assessed by the body that reserves the right to so classify such violent clashes. But what I do think is that this is an unfortunate pogrom. I think that this is an incredible and unacceptable, a deplorable inhumanity by man against his fellow man. I think that this is a highly regrettable, dastardly display of the darkness of the human heart and the fallen nature of humanity. And I believe very strongly that we must realize that violence can never, ever solve violence. We must realize that hate cannot quench hate. We must realize that reprisal attacks cannot end further attacks or reprisal attacks. We must realize that violence will stimulate more violence. Somebody has to have sense, a reason, a rationality, sense, a passion enough to break this cycle of violence. Somebody has to have love enough to break the cycle of violence. I do strongly believe that what will solve this particular crisis will have to be a major shift in perspective, a realization, an incredible realization that true peace can only exist when there is a shift in perspective.
Okay, Chidi, in this conflict right now, in this situation, arms proliferation can't be ruled out, right?
Certainly.
And
certainly.
There has been reports that arms have moved into the country, you know, because of our porous security situation, porous borders, a lot of arms that cannot be accounted for due to politics or violence, and many different, you know, other routes, you know, and responsible that have helped to fuel this unsavory development. What do you think that politics too has a role to play in this whole theater of violence right now?
Well, certainly, politics is merely a platform. Politics is an instrument, and it depends on who is actually playing politics and who is actually employing that instrument. I think it has to do with the individuals, the personages that are involved in this particular conflict. I think, getting to your point, I think that the issue of security is a comprehensive issue. There has to be a comprehensive, an integrated, comprehensive strategy to stem the tide of violence and insecurity in Nigeria, especially in the northern region. The issue of arms proliferation dates back to a long time in Nigerian history, because we've had an unfortunate, consistent porosity in our borders.
Sub-Saharan Africa,
course,
you have conflicts. You have Libya now coming up. You have other countries like Mali, you know, and you know, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, now in the Sahel region.
Of course.
All
of
this
course.
has
I think that to a large extent it is a failure of internal governance.
Okay.
The inability of our government to man its borders, the inability of our government to create an internal system for checking and assessing and screening of goods and that come into the country, an inability of our government to maintain a surveillance, an effective surveillance system that will help to check the goods that go through our country and help to also prevent arms proliferation and prevent dangerous weapons from getting into the hands of those to whom it should never get to. But I think that something that is very important is that I believe very strongly, and I think that the facts would support my belief, that the personages, the big figures that are involved in this particular crisis understand the real solution to the issue. I believe very strongly that the people in Plateau know what needs to be done. And I do hope that they will be honest and firm enough to respond to the dictate of conscience and actually move the direction that they ought to do.
Okay, that's it. That what you just said, it takes me to the next question I'll be asking you now, which is right now, do you see it as a situation of a weak leadership and lack of political will, or a situation that has defied a solution?
Well, I hate to say that any situation is intractable.
Okay.
I hate to say that. I hate to be a gloomy pessimist. Okay. I hate to be the person who would say that the world is dark and beyond redemption. And I do not believe that any situation is actually beyond redemption. But I do strongly believe that perhaps our strategy has been wrong. Okay. That I think that government cannot force peace on the people. It doesn't happen. It has never happened in any part of the world. True peace cannot be sustained via armed force. It doesn't happen. It's not going to happen. You cannot impose peace. I believe that there has to be a comprehensive approach. Government has a role to play by ensuring that there is force used, no doubt, but the people have to also realize that they have an incredible responsibility, they have an incredible role to play in all of this by making sure that they come to the table with clean hands and making sure that they keep the peace.
Okay. Well, if you just joined us, it's Let's Talk, and we've been talking about the Plateau conflict and the Nigerian security question. And with me on the show is Chinedu Chidi. He's a coordinator, Book Rain Initiative, social expert, and public policy analyst. We're talking about this issue, and Chinedu, it brings me to, you know, the situation that just took place, the killings that just took place, where 2 lawmakers even lost their lives when they were trying to do a mass burial for some people that were, you know, killed as a result of the ethnic violence. Fulani herdsmen have been accused, and the security apparatus moved in to evacuate those people from their villages. Now, do you think the Fulanis are more or less the people that we should focus on in this whole conflict that is happening? Is it just a distraction as far as you're concerned? Do you think that it would be nice to say that, look, these are the people, these herdsmen, but a lot of people have said, who is arming the herdsmen? That is the issue, you know.
Well, as far as arming the herdsmen, I think we talked about arms proliferation, and of course there are people behind the scene who actually sponsor the purchase and procurement of arms and the arming of herdsmen and every other group or segment of people involved in this particular conflict. I think it would be rather simplistic to define the conflict simply from the perspective of the involvement of the Fulani herdsmen. I think that it's a comprehensive issue. I believe that there are different factors involved in this particular conflict in Plateau. I've been reading up some issues about the Plateau conflict, and I see that it is a lot more complicated than a single group of people attacking or being uncomfortable with the existence of a particular people within the region, or simply to define the issue as one of religious rivalry or religious clashes. I think there are other issues. There is the issue of religion, there is the issue of history, there is the issue of indigenous settlement law and concept and all of that. So I believe very strongly that why this crisis has actually continued is because nobody has a sense, a reason, and love enough to break the cycle of violence. What I mean is this, that what you see the Fulanis do is actually a reprisal attack. They've been attacked in the past, there's a reprisal attack, then the Plateaus attack again, then there's a reprisal attack. Somebody has to have sense, reason, love, and focus enough to break the cycle of violence. That's what I really think. I think it's a complicated issue, and I believe that the stakeholders within the Plateau have to come together, sit down with the government, and actually honestly, sincerely chart a course for peace moving forward.
Okay, right now, looking at Plateau State, the past, you know, pre-violence era, I mean, there was peace. There was, there was no reason for conflict. These people were always coexisting. What could have triggered this kind of violence that even in papers were reports of cannibalism taking place?
Yep.
What could have caused you to degenerate to that level is as if these people became strange bedfellows all overnight. It's unusual.
I think that what you just said and the question you're asking is a question that has been on the lips of countless people in this country. And I think that, unfortunately, for me, the question arises because we are a people without a sense of history. And we're people who take things for granted. We're people who believe in the peace of the graveyard, who believe that, you know, when things seem calm, that all is well. But I like to disappoint people that all wasn't well, all isn't well, all will not be well until we take care of the issues we're supposed to focus on. Now, living together doesn't mean people are living peacefully. If violence has interrupted, it doesn't mean that internally and in orientation that people are united and people are together. There is a difference between national integration, between ethnic integration, and an appreciation of the essence of that integration. Now, two people can be in the same house, live together for 1 year in the same hostel, and in orientation, they are worlds apart. And one day when there is a conducive atmosphere, permit me to use the word conducive atmosphere for violent externalization of an internal concept or position, it is going to happen. That's what has been happening in the Plateau. They were sitting on a keg of gunpowder. It's what is happening in Nigeria. That's why two peoples and ethnic groups and religious groups seemingly living in peace with different orientation, different things going through their mind. They're worlds apart. Someday there's going to be a violent externalization of negative internal conception.
Okay, now there has been calls by analysts that stakeholders, what do you call it, founding fathers, or you can, elder statesmen should come out and speak out in condemnation of this, because from the north especially, like papers we read, calls have been made to draw Buhari out to make a statement on these things that have happened, called Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. Do you think that is one of the things that needs to be done? Do you think that leaders, elders must come out right now to wade into this issue? It's not just a matter of just operating from the security level alone.
I think there is no alternative that must not be exploited. I believe very strongly that we all have a responsibility, we all have a role to play in ensuring that we have collective peace in our country, and I think the stakeholders in Plateau to have a responsibility, an enormous responsibility actually, to ensure that there is peace in the Plateau. I also think it is simplistic to just assume that a particular figure, political personage, by merely making a press release would somehow change the orientation of all the peoples within a particular place and solve the complex, intricate, complicated issues that have given rise to the violence in a particular place by simply issuing a press release or saying to the people, stop the violence. I think it is a lot more complex. I think it is a lot more complicated. But I think some other people too are playing politics with the matter, involving some particular individuals and saying that they're responsible for the violence, and that by failing to do something that they would somehow make the violent situation to exacerbate. I do not think that, but I think that every political personage, every stakeholder has a responsibility, has a role. The people involved in this particular violence, the people in the trenches, also have an incredible responsibility as far as all of this is concerned. And the government too has, need I say, an absolutely pivotal role to play in ensuring that we have peace. Okay, let's go back to security now. We cannot help but talk about security now. There have been talks, according to a national security advisor, has said that now the army's resources are wearing thin. And one of the things he has pointed is that lack of
lack of data. We're talking about thumbprint. You know, this is the 21st century where intelligence is key. You know, you don't have a national registration, a national grid where everybody's data is, you know, somebody perpetrates, you know, a crime, and definitely once he's dismissed, it's all over. You know, that information is lost. There's nothing, no data bank now to store information on each and every person, and which is key right now in security, because if you do not have that information about, you know, the people in an area, how do you keep track? You cannot track, you know, happenings. And what do you think about this?
Well, this is not the first time that Dasuki is being in government. I think that what we do in this country is very funny. Now, we are not just realizing that we do not have an integrated data bank. We do not have an integrated and effective tracking system. We do not have a good information base, a data system where we can, biometric data system where we can track people. I mean, we have, that's not merely an issue of security. I think it is bigger than that. I think it's a national issue. It's a national issue. It permeates every single sphere of our national life. It is very essential. Now, having said that, I think that that is a very important observation, and I think that the government must take very quick steps in ensuring that we develop an effective database. We ensure that we have good tracking system, documentation of the people within this country, manning of our borders, ensuring that the people in the country come in legitimately if they are not Nigerians, and the people in Nigeria have are well documented as citizens of the country with specifics of geographical location, occupational classification, gender, etc. So we can, if we have an effective tracking system, it's certainly going to help it's certainly going to help in checking the security situation of the country. Be that as it may, I think the government has to show sufficient political will and seriousness, which we think for now is somewhat questionable.
Okay, and there has been statements by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, Ibrahim Badamasi, that, as you said, we should go back to the grassroots. We should go on ground and interact. Intelligence agencies should interact with these people one-on-one. You know, that kind of, not from a distance right now. As you said, these people have a say, and if there's going to be a resolution or a resolve on this issue, it cannot be done without the people who are being affected being involved.
I agree. I'll say a few things. I think that Nigeria is not a 21st century country. I have to seriously say, unfortunately, Nigeria is in the 21st century, but Nigeria is still in the dark ages. In Nigeria, we still have people who don't wear clothes. In 21st century Nigeria, we still have people who have not known basic civilization. We still have places where there's no electricity. We still have places where people do not understand what education means. We have places where people are still in their most primal, basic state. They don't wear clothes. They know nothing. So Nigeria is not in the 21st century. Nigeria is not a 21st century country. I beg your pardon. Nigeria is in the time of the 21st century, but Nigeria is not the 21st century country. So the challenges that we face are actually some of those challenges.
21st century challenges,
and with a backward, perhaps 17th century approach to resolving 21st century challenges. It is absolutely unfortunate. It is absolutely unbelievable. And I think that the government has to realize that there is an enormous responsibility. They have to respond to the urgency of the now, take very drastic measures to ensure that we try as much as we can to resolve the conflicts that we face. We must also realize that brute force is not the single, absolute, most effective approach to resolving security issues in the 21st century. Intelligence gathering is pivotal. Intelligence gathering is central. Intelligence gathering is absolutely, incredibly important to resolving security challenges in the 21st century. There has to be an effective, coordinated, functional intelligence gathering strategy to ensure that we are able to man our borders, ensure that we're able to maintain internal security in the country. So the army must realize that, the army chiefs must realize that. That's why we have Kuru, that's why we have the defense school in Kuru, where people learn strategic studies. The essence is for people, people to be fully empowered, to bring to the table ideas on how to strategically and effectively gather intelligence to prosecute the matter.
Well, in fact, it shows you're very passionate about this issue, as every Nigerian should be, Chidi. Before I, get you all the way worked up about this, let me just ask you my last question. What is your counsel to the government on dealing with the Plateau State challenge, considering the fact that the issue has been lingering on for so long?
I think that my position in all of this is not merely a position directed at the government. I think I'm directing it at all of the stakeholders. The people in Plateau must realize, I think we've come to that point. We've always been at that point, but I think we've had needless casualties and victims of this needless, senseless, dastardly violence in Plateau. And I think the people must realize that there has to be a time when all of this comes to an end. This is an unfortunate crisis. It is a disaster. It is a calamity. The people must realize that we have come to a point where we must stop playing politics. We must stop listening to the petty nuances of ethnic differences and religious diversity. The primary thing in all of this is our humanity. Our humanity is superior to our sentiments. Our humanity is superior to our differences. Our humanity is uniform. We have a common humanity. We have a shared humanity. The pain I feel, my enemy feels the pain I feel. We have a common humanity. And let our sense of our common humanity take precedence over our sentiments. That's the solution to the crisis.
All right, that's the way we have to round up with the much we can take on Let's Talk today. As Chidi has said it all, that Nigeria's unity is not negotiable. We must come to the table transparently. We must come with the will to know that our humanity is the most important thing. Ethnicity and whatever difference must be set aside for us to move forward. Well, I hope you had a wonderful time on Let's Talk today. My name is Henry Williams, and with me has been a gentleman named Chinedu Chidi. As I said, he's always been a guest, comes on the show once in a while, and I thank you, Chidi, for coming.
Always a
pleasure.
It's
great to have you. I look forward to seeing you again on Let's Talk. Thanks for joining us, and that's how we round up today's show. Have a beautiful day.
You're welcome to Let's Talk. We should sit down and talk. We need to sit down and talk. How Nigeria should go, how we're going to do our job.
We want to stand up and say no to corruption. We're going to do our job, protecting the system. You are not just doing good for yourself or for the nation, you also do good for the future.
Boko Haram is an attack, it's a spiritual attack. It's a satanic attack on Nigeria. We must, if we come to recognize it, we will understand then how to look for the solution.
The Sovereign National Conference, how do we want to achieve that in our present system? We need to sit down and iron out how Nigeria should be governed